Good morning and thank you. And Dr. Brown asked that I try to keep it short, but it's hard to cover as much as she's done in a short intro, but I'll do my best. Dr. Courtney Brown is Vice President of Impact and Planning and Chief Data and Research Officer at Lumina Foundation. She leads Lumina's strategic planning, research, evaluation, data, and learning efforts to advance post-secondary attainment and student success. With more than 25 years of experience in leadership, strategic planning, and research, she has dedicated her career to using data to improve education and workforce outcomes. Dr. Brown is recognized as a thought leader on student success, educational attainment, and system performance, and is the author of A Stronger Nation, Lumina's widely used online data tool that tracks progress toward educational attainment goals. She also oversees Lumina's international engagement efforts, collaborates with global partners to strengthen post-secondary education systems, and serves on several boards and advisory groups on education, philanthropy, and international engagement. Dr. Brown earned her bachelor's degree from James Madison University and her master's and doctoral degrees from the University of Virginia. Please help me welcome Dr. Courtney Brown.
Good morning. I often think no one wants to hear about, a long biography about anybody except maybe their parents. Otherwise, it's fine. So thank you all so much for having me here today. It's an honor to be able to speak with you. So we're going to spend the next, 40-ish minutes together. So I want to say something up front. As Chuck kind of explained my background, this work is not abstract to me. I live right here in Indianapolis, about 11 minutes east of here. All 4 of my kids have a degree from Indiana University. So when we talk about attainment goals and credential pathways and keeping talent in states that educated it, we're talking about my kids. We're talking about my neighbors. We're talking about my kids' teachers, the people building and staffing and running the communities that I live in, like mine. I have skin in this work. And I'm grateful to be in a room where the people with the most leverage over those outcomes are sitting together. So before I get into the data, I want to tell you about someone. It's my husband's niece, Jessica. She lives in Indiana, and she's married with 3 boys at home. Her husband works a union job outside of Chicago. And for the past year, since her youngest went to school, she has seriously been thinking about going back to college. Not casually, seriously. She looked at programs, she compared options, she did the math more than once. She even started an application. And then she stopped. Not because she doesn't believe in education. She told me at Christmas, I know it works. I've seen it work for other people. Not because she lacks ambition. Believe me, she's got plenty of that. She stopped because of something she said that I haven't been able to shake. She said, I can't afford to be wrong. Every instinct I have wanted to argue with her. I know the data. I know the lifetime earnings. I know the mobility research. But she isn't wrong. She's sensing something real. She doesn't need convincing that a degree has value. She's asking if the specific credential she would pursue from the institution she can actually get to will work for her in her life with her constraints. She needs someone to answer her question, not hand her a brochure. Jessica is not an outlier. She's a pattern. 58% of adults without degrees have considered pursuing a credential in the last 2 years. Among adults who've stopped out, who started and didn't finish, 69% want to come back. The demand is enormous. The hesitation is rational. Everything I want to walk through with you this morning is about whether our systems can actually answer Jessica's question. So you've all been in conversations with legislators, with parents, with reporters, with your family, where someone asks whether a college degree is even worth it anymore. The data are clear. The wage gap between a college graduate and a high school graduate has not shrunk, it's grown. In 1990, recent college graduates earned about $15,000 more per year over someone with only a high school diploma. Today, that gap is $24,000. And that's in the first years of a career, before the premium compounds. Economists who have followed workers across their entire careers find the premium roughly doubles over a lifetime, 27% at 25, well over 60% by 55. Unemployment for bachelor's degree holders is less than 3%. Unemployment overall is closer to 5%. For those without a diploma, over 6%. The gap has held through every economic cycle for 2 decades. In our Lumina Gallup alumni survey of nearly 6,000 degree holders, 93% said they would get a degree again if they had to do it over. Not 60%, 93%. Employers back this up. 74% say the importance of a degree or credential will remain the same or increase over the next 5 years. The value is real. What's at question is the delivery. And nothing is testing that question more sharply right now than AI. AI isn't killing the degree. It's raising the bar for what a degree needs to do. The World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report shows the skills growing fastest in importance are creative thinking, analytical reasoning, communication, and the ability to learn continuously. A Stanford analysis from 2025 found that communication skills specifically will grow in value as AI rises, even as technical tasks like data analysis and accounting are partially automated away. The skills AI cannot replicate, judgment, synthesis, nuanced communication, navigating ambiguity with other humans, are exactly what a well-designed degree builds. The skills most at risk from automation are the narrow, task-based ones that a poorly designed credential over-indexes on. But here's what makes this urgent rather than theoretical. In our most recent poll with Gallup, 42% of bachelor's degrees have reconsidered their major because of AI. 16% have changed it because of AI. Students are making real decisions right now about whether what they're studying still maps to the economy they're encountering. For a generation that already wonders whether the system was built for them, AI adds a new layer of doubt and a new reason to hesitate before committing. The case for the degree has never been more defensible. The urgency to redesign it has never been greater. Both of these things are true at the same time. Against that backdrop, the progress we have made in increasing attainment is worth naming clearly. When Lumina started tracking attainment data in 2009, about 38% of working-age adults had a post-high school credential of any kind. Today, that number is approaching 55%, 16 percentage points over 15 years. Millions of people better off because of someone built better pathways, held in line on funding, and kept showing up. Attainment across MEC states has also risen. Over the same time span, your states have averaged 17 percentage point gain, real progress, state by state. Some states are at or above the national average. Others have a little more ground to cover. But every state has increased significantly. That happened because people in rooms like you, choices they made year after year. This is an amazing accomplishment, and it's thanks to your dedication. But here's the harder truth. While attainment has increased, confidence in higher ed has been decreasing, going from 57% a decade ago to a low of 36% in 2024. This isn't a paradox, it's a signal. Now, Gallup's most recent survey last year shows the first sign of recovery. 42% of Americans now say they have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in higher education. But make no mistake, 42% is not a mandate, it's a slight reprieve. The reasons people are skeptical are pointed: cost, a sense of what gets taught isn't actually what gets used, and a growing feeling that the system wasn't designed for their lives. Only 11% of bachelor's graduates say four-year colleges charge fair prices for what they offer. And that's among people who already have a degree and overwhelmingly say it was worth getting. Here's a number that should stop all of us in this room. Only 25% of adults without a degree say all or most people in the US have access to quality, affordable higher education. That's down 10 percentage points since 2023, the steepest two-year drop in the history of the survey. At the same time, 58% of non-enrolled adults have considered pursuing a degree or credential in the last 2 years. The demand is there. The perceived pathway is not. This gap between the value people believe in and the system they have to navigate, it's not a communication problem. It's a design problem. And the design problem has a specific shape. When we ask alumni what resources they most wish that had been available when completing their degree, the top answer, by a huge margin, is career coaching. 53%, not tutoring, not mental health support, career coaching. They wanted someone to tell them, this is how this connects to a job. Here's what people who finish this program actually do. Here's what this specific credential from this specific institution lands in the real economy. That's Jessica's question, but our systems haven't been built to answer it. So at Lumina, we sat with all this, the progress that was real and hard-won, the confidence that kept declining anyway, the employers who valued degrees and couldn't find the skills they needed, the Jessicas who wanted what education could give them and kept stopping short. And we asked ourselves, is what we've been measuring enough to fix any of this? And the honest answer is no. Not because the progress wasn't real. It was. Not because the goal was wrong. It moved the country in the right direction for 15 years. But the data kept pointing at the same problem. We'd been measuring the wrong thing. We knew how many people got a credential. We didn't know whether those credentials were actually making people's lives any better. And here's what matters. The public figured this out before we did. That's what the confidence numbers are telling us. That's what Jessica is telling us. People don't doubt the value of education. They doubt whether the specific credential from the specific institution they can actually access will deliver on what it promises. They've seen enough cases where it didn't, and for Jessica, and honestly for the vast majority of people in the US, they have one shot at getting it right. A credential alone doesn't guarantee economic security. Some credentials leave people worse off than when they started, the debt accumulated, the time invested, the job that didn't materialize. That's a kind of outcome that fuels public skepticism and Jessica's hesitation. And it's a kind of outcome that a 60% attainment goal was never designed to catch. So the new goal, by 2040, 75% of working age adults in the US labor force will have a credential of value, where value means earning at least 15% above the national median age for a high school graduate. Not how many people get a credential, how many are economically better off because of it. The baseline, measured this way, is at about 44%. So from 44 to 75 by 2040, it's ambitious. It's achievable. I just showed you what we did over 15 years. And it's a goal you can defend to a skeptical legislator and to a skeptical Jessica, because it's built around the outcome she's actually asking about. Now, some states are going to find their numbers look stronger than their credentials of value numbers. That's not an indictment. It's a diagnostic, telling you something important about pathway quality, employer alignment, and whether the return on investment is actually landing for real learners. Here's the baseline data for your states, averaging just over 42%. Now, I know some of you have questions about this goal, so let me take some of them head on. We'll have some time at the end for more. First, earnings alone don't tell the whole story. A credential that saddles someone with $60,000 in debt for a $38,000 job isn't a credential of value, even if it clears the earnings threshold. We know that. The 15% earnings benchmark is a starting point. It's not a finish line. We're actively working to build cost and debt burden into the framework and to capture non-financial outcomes, civic participation, health, economic mobility, across generations. That work is happening at a national level right now. The goal will get more complete as the measurement does. Second, some of you will say you don't have the data to measure this today. That's partly true and partly a reason to start, not a reason to wait. Most states have more wage record data, more outcome data, more employer survey data than they're currently using. The infrastructure to connect credential completion to earnings already exists in many states. It's just not being used systemically to drive decisions. And where the data genuinely don't exist yet, building it is part of this work. You can't manage what you don't measure. The states that start measuring now will be at least 2 years ahead of the ones that wait for the perfect data. The goal is imperfect, but it's also the most honest answer we've ever offered to Jessica's question. So let's talk a little more specifically about the Midwest and why the credentials of value frame matters more here than almost anywhere else in the nation. Within every state in the Midwest, metro numbers are masking rural realities that look very different. The useful question isn't, what's our state's number? It's, where's our number lowest, and who's being left out, and what's driving it? But there's a second question that doesn't get asked nearly enough, and it's actually the credentials of value question in disguise. So before I show you the next set of numbers, I want to name something. You've been doing hard work in a hard moment. Enrollment cliffs, funding cuts, federal policy whiplash, demographic headwinds that no one prepared us for. The scrutiny on higher education is real. Some of it's fair, and most of it lands on people who are trying to fix things rather than ones that created the problems. That's true. And I want to say it plainly before I add to the list of hard things. The Midwest is educating people and then losing them. Domestic outmigration from this region has slowed. The Midwest recorded the first year of net positive domestic migration recently. But losing fewer people isn't the same as gaining them. And the composition of who's leaving is actually the problem. The people leaving the Midwest consistently have more education than the people arriving. Researchers call this the leaver premium, the gap between the median income of those departing and those coming in. In the Midwest, that number, that gap, has roughly tripled over the past 2 decades and sits at more than $15,000 per year. Right here in Indiana, the numbers are striking. Indiana ranks 3rd nationally in net in-migration of college freshmen. We attract students. Then we lose nearly 40% of them within the first year after they graduate. Good at the front door, losing them out the back. The pattern holds across your states. Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, Missouri. The most common reason people give for leaving isn't quality of life. It's opportunity. They don't see a career trajectory they want here. Now connect that to what employers are telling us. The data's a map, not an indictment. It points at a structural mismatch that no individual institution caused and no individual institution can fix alone. But it's real. And the Midwest has more leverage to address it than almost anywhere else in the country. 56% of employers say it's difficult to find candidates with the right skills. 69% say recent college graduates need significant additional training to be effective when hired. Only 54% say U.S. colleges are graduating students with the skills their organizations actually need. Think of those two figures together. We're producing graduates who can't see their future here and employers who can't find what they need. This isn't a coincidence. It's a credentials of value problem. Graduates are answering Jessica's question with their feet, and their answer they're giving is, I couldn't see a path forward here, so I left. We still need more graduates. The attainment goal is not finished, but volume alone can't close this gap. We need more graduates whose credentials connect visibly, specifically to opportunities in the regional economy, before they commit and before they leave. And in rural communities, the challenge isn't just who's leaving. It's the infrastructure to help them stay and thrive was never fully built in the first place. So I want to acknowledge what you're all doing. The work happening through MEC's innovation grants in Michigan, Illinois, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Kansas, and across all 12 states. It's targeted exactly at this gap, not studying it, not planning around it, building directly toward credentials that land in the real economy. That work matters, and it's being noticed. So here's the harder ask. First, adopt a credentials of value goal, not an attainment number, a measure tied to economic outcomes. Illinois is already asking the right question, not just how many people earn credentials, but what credentials the economy will actually need in 2040. That's the frame. Every state in this compact should be able to say clearly what percentage of its working age adults hold credentials that are paying off and what it's doing to move that number. This is a goal you can defend to a skeptical legislator, it's a goal you can show to a nervous parent, and it's the answer Jessica needs before she'll commit. Here's what you'll learn, here's what it connects to, here's what people in your situation earned after they finished. Specific, honest, before she has to bet. 2, let the brightest spots become everyone's standard. Every one of your states is running an experiment right now. Something is working somewhere. A credential pathway, a rural delivery model, a retention strategy that's actually keeping graduates in the state. MEC exists precisely so that when Wisconsin figures something out, Indiana doesn't have to start from scratch. You have 12 laboratories. The return on this compact is only as good as the learning you move across it. 3, you have built real things. Now build them into your system. The pilot phase has earned its place, and now it's time to graduate it. The most transformative work in Midwestern higher education right now is stuck at small. One champion, one grant, one visionary department chair who retires and takes the whole thing with her. If something is moving the needle on outcomes, build it into policy. Write it into your funding structure. Make it survive the next leadership transition. The Midwest has proven it can innovate. The next test is whether it can scale. 4, own the AI moment before it owns you. The institutions redesign their credentials around the skills AI cannot replace: judgment, communication, creative problem solving, and the ability to learn continuously. Those are the ones that are going to be able to answer Jessica's question convincingly. Some of you are already doing this. You've redesigned programs, you've built new partnerships, and you put the evidence in front of skeptical faculty and legislators. This work is not a side project, it's the model. The ones that don't will find the scrutiny they're facing today looks mild in comparison to what's coming. This room is where that coordination starts. No one is better positioned to lead it than a 12-state compact with shared infrastructure, shared data, and a shared stake in getting it right. So Jessica's still out there. She hasn't made her decision yet. She's not waiting for a better brochure, a more compelling ad, or a more motivational speech about what higher education can do. She's waiting for someone to answer her actual question. Will this work for me? Not for people like me, for me, in my life, with 3 boys at home, a union household, and 1 shot at getting this right. I'll be honest, I take it personally. As I said in the beginning, I have skin in this game, and Jessica's family to me. And she deserves a system that can answer her question with something specific and honest. Here's what you learn, here's what it connects to, here's how people in your situation have done after they finished, and here's what they earn. That's what the confidence crisis is. Underneath all the Gallup numbers and the headlines, people haven't lost faith in education. They're just not sure the system was designed for them. And until we can answer Jessica's question clearly, specifically, before she commits, we'll risk losing her and thousands of other Jessicas. And we'll keep losing the people who, after they graduate here, load a truck and leave because they couldn't find a path forward here. The degree is not dead. The urgency to redesign it is real. The Midwest has the institutions, the ethos, and now the framework to lead that work. You have something most of the country doesn't. 12 states convene together with the infrastructure to learn from each other and move collectively. The public has not given up on higher education. They're watching to see if we do what we say. Build the systems that deserve their confidence and answer Jessica's question. Thank you. Now, I don't know if people have questions. You probably have better answers than I do, but I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mike Baumgartner from Nebraska. Among the many strategies Lumina is employing across the country, what are the most effective or most promising ones right now to achieve what you've talked about?
So we're doing a couple things that I would point to. The new admissions redesign, so and many of your states are already doing some of that, where students in high school get admitted automatically to a number of schools without even applying, and that's showing very promising results. We also have some future-ready states work, where we're trying to help states use better data to understand what skills, knowledge, credentials are going to be most important moving forward in the future. Yes.
Hi, Courtney. Dan Hurley from Michigan. One thing that did not come, just a remarkable set of data, is always thanks to you and the foundation for all the work, research data, et cetera. One theme I did not hear a lot about, which I've been hearing from other stakeholders, especially in the polling arena, when it comes to frustration, cynicism, concern on the part of whether it's prospective students, parents, lawmakers, is the issue of cost transparency. So when it comes to your niece, you know, it's connecting the dots, but then there's the question of what is this actually going to cost me, when also factoring in institutional, state, federal financial aid. Is that issue of just cost transparency, pricing transparency, a theme in the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, having much more, I mean, it's part of our affordability work, so understanding transparency. I mean, people deserve to have the data, and not just for the first year. So a lot of times we're very transparent about, you know, when you're enrolling, this is exactly how much it's going to cost, and then it changes the next semester and the next year. I mentioned at the beginning that I have 4 kids who have degrees from Indiana University, 3 who have a bachelor's from there. 3 of them were enrolled at the same time in the same college. I never knew what my tuition was going to be for them, and it was always different. And I'm in the field. Do you think I could make sense of it? I couldn't make any sense of it. So it's definitely something that came up. We just did focus groups with parents, actually, all over the country, trying to better understand some of their concerns about affordability, and that's one of the main things. And some of our other polling we have done, we ask people, how much does it cost? They say it's too expensive, and they go, okay, well, how much do you think it costs? And it's amazing how many people say it's not affordable, but they're overestimating and underestimating. And then you go, well, actually, in your state, the average, you know, 4-year degree and 2-year degree is this. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. And then they're more likely to say, well, maybe I would consider it. But they really have no idea what it costs. Yes?
I want to get the issue of credentials of value, because the suggestion that policymakers are in the best position to do that, I'm Todd Jones, I'm from Ohio, I represent the nonprofit colleges, and I've spent much of the last 20 years listening to our policymakers, but we're not the only state, telling people coding is a wonderful area to go. We need you to spend your time, you know, preparing. It's a guaranteed job. These stackable credentials are going to lead to a degree, and it's going to change your life. And now, I think you can make a colorable argument that, in fact, problems are worse and cynicism is deeper, because people who follow that path and have those positions have debt and no jobs. Is it better? Why is Lumina confident of the ability of policymakers to target these, when in some ways that, you know, based on recent experience, they haven't had the talent to do it recently, but this time they're going to get it right?
Huh. So I don't think it all falls in the laps of policymakers. I think they're an important group in the mix. You know, and you raised a really good question about coding and other skills. I mean, where we've really found some of those credentials to be of the most value is on top of a degree, not as a standalone credential, because as soon as that job goes away, that skill gets automated or whatever, then that job goes away. And so really thinking about how do we build systems that build this learning as you go, you're continuously learning throughout. And that's why I kind of focused a lot on what is a degree going to do for you? What are the skills that AI can't replicate? And we know that degrees build in communication and judgment and synthesis and all of those things that are going to be continuously more important. The other thing is, you know, jobs are going to come and go, skills, coding, whatever, and so it's not a one and done. This is a continuous cycle of understanding what's going to be needed and what's going to be needed in your regional economies. I don't have the perfect answer for you, but it's going to take all of us continuously looking at the data and deciding what's going to work.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you for being here. This is terrific. So there's 2 comments online that I'm going to read. Can you hear me? 3 comments, but I'm going to start with 2 that I noted, just because I think it'll help us in our role working with states. So just first, do you have any advice on how to help folks move from the old goal to the new goal? You know, because we do like a report on our state highlights when we visit state capitals on the old goal. And so we need some help helping them. And then also, one of my favorite charts from my days back serving as an advisor through HCM on the attainment goal is that horizontal chart that shows states where they are in relationship, their own state versus the Midwest, on who has a high school diploma, who doesn't, what's the pool of people, the percentage that has some college but haven't finished, certifications, et cetera. So those are my 2 questions, and then I'm just going to run through the ones online. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. This is from Pranav Katari, who leads the Board of Regents in Illinois, and he's one of our commissioners. Can you speak more to the role of employers in getting to credentials of value? Ultimately, they're making decisions on what they are willing to pay for, but we seem to put the onus on students and institutions to make this all work for students. And I've got 2 more after that.
All right, I'm not sure what your second question was. Go see Stronger Nation. You talked about it.
My own question or the one from Pranav?
The middle question about, you said
about,
chart
you
you
know,
liked at one point.
The
in
chart,
Stronger
and
Nation.
then everybody, I think you and I talked about this. Everybody talks about the growth is in the certification, the certificates area. You know, how do states think about where to focus on along that chart, right? Like, should we get more people out of high school with some certification? Or how much emphasis should we put on a 2-year degree or a 4-year or beyond? I think that's something that we've heard folks raise questions about.
Okay, well, let me start there just because we just ended there. So that one, you know, it depends on your economy. Like every state is different on what mix you need of different types of credentials. The ones that are going to pay off the most, we know that have the most nimbleness and staying power are the bachelor's degrees and above. Those are the ones where people, the unemployment rate stays really low. People are able to find jobs much faster. They feel like they have purpose in their lives, and you know they're healthier, all those other things. So that's kind of the gold standard. And like the short-term credentials really are valuable on top of that. You know, from projections that we have about 5% of the public has a short-term credential, certificate, or certification, and we don't really see that increasing in the future moving forward. So less than 5 to 7% will have short-term credentials. Now that's different in every state. That's at a national level. So, you know, there are, when you talk about where the opportunities are, you know, especially with the demographic cliff and other things coming, they're not necessarily going to be the 16 and 15-year-olds. They're going to be those some college no degree, those adults that need to be skilled and upskilled and reskilled. I'm not sure if that answered that question. The first question was on, I already lost it.
Old goal to the new goal.
Oh, old goal to new goal. Okay, so there are 2 different things. So it's important to continue to increase attainment. We're not there, but we want to make sure that when people have that credential, that it is paying off. There are 2 separate things that we have to think about with attainment goal. The attainment goal, I'm going to use math really fast, but it's going to be really simple math for people that are anti-math. The 60% by 2025 goal has a denominator that was the whole population 25 to 64. The credentials of value is a different measurement. The denominator is actually the people 25 to 64 in the labor force. Those are people employed or unemployed looking for work or in the military. So it's a different denominator in that goal. They both have to have the credential and have that 15% premium to be in the numerator. So both are important. We're going to continue to track the attainment goal. It is still in Stronger Nation. For those of you who haven't seen Stronger Nation, you can find some of the data we were just talking about in Stronger Nation. Go play with it, disaggregate it how many ways. The attainment data will always be in there. We will keep measuring that because it continues to be important, but the front measure is the credentials of value measure. And so it really is making sure that when somebody gets that credential, that it does pay off. It does provide them a good job and a good life.
Thanks.
And
so we have about 6 minutes, but I do want to try to get to these online questions if folks here are okay with that.
there are 2 questions up here too. So you can decide.
So I'm going to go with this because this came in first, if that's okay, from Pranav, speaking to the role of employers in getting to credentials of value. They're making decisions, apparently, on what they are willing to pay for, but we seem to put the onus on students and institutions to make that work for students.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a problem that we have, and I'm not exactly sure. I'm hoping people in this room can figure out how to solve it. There's this gap between higher ed and employers, where higher ed feels like, all right, we're done, go into the workforce, and the workforce is saying, wait, you needed to have all types of experience before you came in. We don't want to hire you without experience, and nobody's owning this gap between what happens after you finish the degree and what happens before you're employed. You know, I would also say that employers used to provide experiences for more students. They also used to understand that a new graduate comes and needs training. And now they don't want to accept that. So employers are not providing as much as they used to, I would say, as far as training. They feel like it's higher ed's work, and higher ed feels like we've educated them, now it's your work to get them some experience and train. So we need to figure out who's going to own that gap between completing the degree and starting employment, and it needs to become much more fluid there. You know, and you're right, like, we don't have control. So in higher ed, we don't have control over what people pay, but we can make sure that we are preparing our graduates with the regional needs that we have, or the needs that are going to provide that premium. If some employers aren't, you know, another question I have that's semi-related is we have high needs, low-paid jobs, nursing, early education, those sorts of things. We need to come up with other policies or ways to think about how do we subsidize those. If people aren't going to, you know, pay that premium, is there a way that states can subsidize the education for nurses or teachers or other things so that they do have that premium and aren't going into the workforce with a lot of debt. The employer higher ed, you know, since I've been in this field has always been, you know, that we need to get them in the room and talk, and they still talk past each other. So I don't have a great solution for that. You guys are doing really interesting things in your state, so I'm hoping something you're piloting or testing or experiencing can help inform the rest of us. But I don't have the brilliant answer for that. Yes.
So just, I want to start off by saying listening to Lumina information has just been so important in my career over the last 25 years in higher ed. And to that last point, as far as how do you solve that problem, I have one piece of experience having served on a technical college board for a college in Wisconsin for over 15 years. What they did at one point is they hired their president directly out of continuing ed and business and industry training. And that professional had been working in the community. It's a really big focus in Wisconsin for those schools to work in the community and sell training through our universities. It would not have been a traditional hire, but we typically, like, we have these traditional hires, and so there are some things I think that we can learn from institutions. But my question is, when you talk about the future ready work, and I just think, like, how do we continue to convince decision makers in our states, you know, through governors' administrations or through, you know, higher ed leaders to engage with Lumina, and how can like a person like me become on the pulse of what is really happening between your organization and in my state?
So more about how do we talk to policymakers about this?
How do we convince policymakers? Like, we have election coming up, and it'll be a good time to talk to, you know, in Wisconsin, to the new governor's administration about adopting maybe some of these things, which I think is very, very bipartisan when you don't just talk about, you know, degrees, you talk about credentials, right? So we can engage, but what are suggestions to really get, like, new people that are coming in and making decisions to become engaged and adopt some of your recommendations?
Yeah, so I would say one of the things that I mentioned was the credentials of value in disguise problem that we have really is the people that are leaving. You know, we're educating them. Wisconsin educates a lot of people, and then they leave Wisconsin for better opportunities. And so talking to legislators, how do we keep our graduates here? We have to find pathways for them. We have to make sure that there are opportunities for them. So that's what becomes the credentials of value goal makes it important, because they need to make sure that they can find a job that's going to give them a good job and a good life in Wisconsin. And so how do you build those pathways? How do you make sure that you are providing those credentials? So that's what I would lead with. We want to keep people, educated people that we're educating in our state, would be my first one. Others may have better experience with legislators.
I think we have time for one more question. I think if there's not one in the room, we've got one online. And to the online people, what we'll do, if you're willing, Courtney, is we've got just a couple in the queue. Maybe I could follow up with you individually, and you could share back. I know Mike Duffy has a question. So,
Happy to.
Anybody in the room here? Okay. Mike Duffy has a question. It's a long one. Mike, why don't you unmute and ask your own question? That would be great. And then we've got to wrap up so we can hear from you.
I usually use Mike on a panel to answer the questions.
Yeah, come on, Mike. Answer your own question, Mike.
Good to see you, Courtney. Courtney, so the question is, I want to bring up to the rest of the commissioners, the 2040 goal is a threshold goal. So it is 15% above a high school diploma. It results in a count. The count is divided by the total population in the labor force. And that yields the percentage that we're aiming for by 2040. So, you know, there's an incentive for every state to achieve that 15% above But sometimes in certain disciplines, we see master's degrees growing faster than short-term credentials or associate degrees, or even faster than baccalaureate degrees. And the question is, does that create an incentive for states to race to just credentials that achieve 15% above a high school diploma and not do what might be a net present value that's higher for the individual over their lifetime of a baccalaureate or a master's degree? Because we do see this flattening right now. It's kind of the Wild West in short-term certificates. They have an initial bump, and then there's no upward mobility for the person after, the initial hire.
I love that question. I don't have a great answer to it, but you've raised something really important. It's you're kind of playing with the system to create an outcome that is not sustainable, and that's one of the problems with the goal. Like, this is at a moment in time. We're measuring the income at wages at a moment in time, and so that's a really honest concern that could happen. And with a lot of those short-term credentials is your only credential. Just like with the coding, as soon as that job is gone, the person has nothing, and then they're back down to needing to get another credential. So I think that's something that we have to pay attention to, and the people in this room are the right people to think about that this is not about a one and done or a short term where it's only going to provide that premium for a year or maybe 18 months, and then they're going to have to start all over again. That's a lot of resources on your state to have to keep training and reskilling people. So thank you for bringing that up, and I look forward to the solutions that you all come up with to solve that. Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate it.